So hopefully you've had a chance to grab all of your props and find a quiet place. You can come into cross-legged or any comfortable seat that's available to you. And we'll start here. So we always start in a comfortable seated position because it gives us an opportunity to turn into our practice. So making like a starting point, and then we have an ending point at the end of class so that your yoga practice is in this time and space, so that everything else gets put on hold. And this is an important transition to make from being busy or active to then starting your yoga practice. So I'd like to start with creating a little bit of endurance and awareness of posture, and I'll keep you entertained during that time by telling you about the doshas. So find a comfortable seat, rest your hands on your knees or your thighs, make your spine nice and tall, shoulders relaxed down and back. It's really important that you can create this sense of being lifted or lengthened through the spine, keeping your chin parallel to the floor. It's sometimes helpful to think of the tip of your tailbone being like an anchor weighing you down, and your head being like a balloon, light and lifting up. And then once you've created that, I want you to maintain it. And this does create a sense of fatigue after a while because you've been sitting in the same shape without a lot of movement for a while, and that's okay. It builds up our endurance. So the doshas are energies that we are born with at birth. They're predetermined. We don't have a lot of control over them until later in life when we recognize them and then make choices. So the doshas are pitta, vata, and kapha. And we all have all three, but each individual is given a different percentage of each of the energies. And they're pretty easy to see in other people. And I'm sure as we go through it, you'll notice either things in yourself or in others around you. So still maintaining your posture. You can have your eyes downclasped or closed and focusing on a nice, slow, deep breath. Now, vatas tend to be lean and lanky, thinner, smaller framed people. They're very creative. And as long as their doshas in pretty good balance, they function pretty well. When they get out of balance, they tend to be anxious and, how can I put this nicely? They're kind of flaky. They change their mind a lot. And I'm a vata. I'll say that off the top. Pittas, on the other hand, tend to be quite muscular. They're very natural leaders. They're competitive. They're fiery. So pitta is associated with fire. Vata is associated with wind. When pittas are out of balance, they tend to be angry or aggressive. They tend to have illnesses that are from inflammation, so too much fire. Kaphas, if you have a kapha in your life, you're really quite fortunate. They're very dependable, very stable. They tend to stay in jobs for long periods of time. They're loving and compassionate. However, if a kapha gets out of balance, they tend to be lethargic. They can tend to lean towards obesity. So that's just a little overview of the three doshas. Maybe you already know which one you are. Or you could have an even amount of two or an equal amount of all three. And then that gets a bit more interesting. So continuing in your posture, hopefully you haven't let that go at any point while I've been rambling on. Still have a nice, smooth, even breath. Take a few moments now to think about which dosha you are and what that means to you and what choices you may have to make in your daily life to keep yourself balanced. your eyes are downcast or closed, flutter them open, and I'd like you to move into child's pose. So hands and knees, big toes to touch. And knees can be wide or narrow, your choice as to where you want to start. Walk your hands out long and bring your forehead down onto the mat. Now arms could go out long and straight in front, or if you prefer, they could go between your legs and you're coming down to one cheek. Or maybe your knees are a bit narrower and your hands go back towards the heels. Find comfort in your child's pose. Close down the eyes if possible. Go back to the nice, slow, even breath. And again, we're just going to hold the shape. So the shape is, you're already in it, but there's lots of ways to modify or vary it without really coming out of the shape. And that's our goal. So stay in a shape a little bit longer than we normally would in a yin posture. So you stay as long as you can until you feel that like unavoidable need to move. And then when you do move, you make a small change to your posture. So that might be the knees going wider or narrower. Perhaps you're changing the orientation of your arms. Perhaps you're bringing a prop in or taking a prop out, but you're still in the general shape of the posture. So we're working on the hips. We're working on lengthening through the spine. And of course, there's quite a bit of compression through the knees and the ankles. So there's a lot going on in the posture. Just stay where you can. And when you feel that need to move, you move. So for Vatas, because they can tend to be quite flighty, they change their mind a lot, they're very creative, and they can be distracted quite easily. So a yin practice is very powerful for them because it helps to ground them and to give them a space and a time where they can sort through all their ideas and all of their thoughts, helping them become a bit more focused. And then once they can focus their energy, they tend to be quite productive. Now, Pittas usually tend to be quite resistant to yin or to a gentler yoga practice because they're very competitive and they like fast-paced, challenging workouts. They like challenging jobs. They like to be leaders. So they might be leading the class, not so much participating for some. So for Pittas, in order to stay balanced, they really need to work hard on creating that balance by doing activities that are more mindful, a little slower moving, and definitely moving away from the competitiveness. So doing activity where it's more about being creative or about mindful rather than pushing themselves and trying to feed their ego. Now, Kaphas, they tend to be quite slow moving and very scheduled. They like routine. So they tend to be pretty well regulated. However, for them to be avoiding coming out of balance, becoming lethargic, they need to increase their energy. So they need to find ways to inspire themselves to move faster, to do more, to stay active. And so for yin, a kapha would probably focus more on the back bends. So opening out to the heart, stimulating the nervous system through the spine, because back bends tend to give us a bit more energy and they leave us feeling stimulated. A kapha could also approach yin just a tiny bit more yang-like, where they're pushing themselves a little bit more than they normally would, just slightly out of their comfort zone, so that again they're not becoming lethargic or just sort of moving through the paces. All right, so you're almost done. Hopefully you've had a chance to move at least once or twice while you've held your child's pose. And then in just a moment here, I'm going to ask you to come out of it. But take the last few remaining breaths where you are. Have a moment or two of silence. Whatever version of child's pose you've been in, ease your way up into tabletop. So that's hands and knees. And we're going to go through our spinal flossing. So we'll start with the knees underneath the hips, hands maybe just slightly ahead of the shoulders. And this might seem counterintuitive to how you normally do this, but just try it and see how you feel. Toes can be tucked or untucked, your choice. Let your hips move back towards the heels, but let your belly drop as if you're coming into our cow pose. And you're going to let your hips go back as the belly drops. and your gaze can be forward. Hold here. And now as you start to let your hips move back forward, you're going to round up into your cat pose. So the hips can go as far forward as you can comfortably handle the weight on your wrist. Round up to your upper back, tuck your chin and look towards your knees or your thighs. And then we're going to move in and out of these two shapes. So the hips go back, the belly drops, gaze is forward. And then moving forward, back rounds, chin tucks. Now once you get the pattern of the movement, you can move through it at your own pace. Now we're stimulating the nervous system by moving the spine. We're creating patterns and rhythms in the body. So you're staying mindfully aware of what you're feeling, how you're moving, and making any adjustments as you come through the postures. Almost done, just a few more. And then we'll meet back at tabletop. From tabletop, take your knees just a little bit wider. Feet will be also apart now instead of toes touching. And you're going to let your hips come back, and you're going to press yourself into a squat. So you'll have to set your feet, and you can add props underneath the sit bones. You can determine the angle of your feet and the space between your knees. Hands can stay down out in front. If you have the balance, you can bring them up. So common things that might happen in this shape is the knees don't want to be here. So you can come down onto your sit bones, have your legs out in front, and have a nice tall upright posture. You could also be up higher, so there's not so much compression through the knees. So almost like a wall squat, forearms on the thighs. You may also not be able to get your heels down. That's okay. If you have a towel or a blanket to slide underneath the heels, they can rest on that. So once you find your shape, settle into it. Perhaps again you can either have the eyes downcast or closed. Breathing in and out nice and slow and steady through the nose. And we'll stay here for a minute or two. It's a great opportunity to just think about the things that might be affecting your dosha. And these are the seasons, age, your environment, your diet, the societal things that are going around you will also have a strong influence on your dosha. The things you're drinking, the things you're watching, the things you're listening to, those are all going to have an effect on you. And so we need to be aware of that and make really healthy, good choices. So in your squat pose, this is a great posture for the vatas and the pittas. Anytime we get our hips or our pelvis closer down towards the earth, it would be considered a grounding posture. So it tends to be quite relaxing, it's very stable, and it's a great posture to become a bit more mindful in. So tune in. We're staying here for a little bit longer still. Just before we start to come out of this shape and give our knees and our hips a bit of a break, we're going to bring the right hand out in front, so coming to the floor. The left hand is either going to go to your left knee, or if you can get your right shoulder down a little bit farther, maybe your left hand can reach up towards the ceiling, or even wrap around behind your back. So choose an option. We're just creating a rotation through the torso as we stay in our squat, and you can access this from any of the variations. Now we're going to bring the left hand down and switch sides. Bringing the right hand back down to the floor, we're moving into our dangling posture. So this will be really nice for the backs of the legs and the knees. Hands come down, start to straighten your legs, lift your hips. You can heel toe your feet either wider or narrower, bring them back to face forward. You can, if you have a wall behind you, you can lean your bum against it. If you don't, no big deal, just choose how much you're going to bend your knees. And then hands can either rest on the floor, on props, or you could grab opposite elbows. And we're going to hang here for 2 to 3 minutes. So at any point during that time you feel like you need to come out, you either walk the hands up the body and slowly come upright, or you can come back down into the squat for a brief rest and then come back up. So dangling again is a wonderful posture for all 3 doshas. It's especially good if you add a visualization to it. So this would be great for the pittas. Imagine if you've ever gone camping or you've been out in nature and maybe you've had to wash your hair in a waterfall or a stream. So as you hang here and dangling, imagine that there's cool water running down your back, through your shoulders and into the back of your head. And imagine this cool water running and coming down off the scalp. Like a cold waterfall running down your back, cooling you down. And then you're modifying your shape by bending or straightening the knees. And if you need movement, you're welcome to rock the upper body side to side. Or maybe bending one knee and then the other. And then coming back to just simply hold your shape. Now, whichever version you're in, whether your hands are down or grabbing elbows, bring your fingertips back down to the mat. Turn your toes back out, heels back in preparation for coming back down into your squat. So again, choosing the version or the variation that's appropriate for you today. Move around, wiggle around until you can find where you can stay and hold. We want again to create the same spine that we had at the very beginning. So a nice tall spine, heavy through the tailbone, airy and light through the head. Fingertips can either rest down or pee up into your Anjali Mudra. And we'll hold here. more breaths. Now before we come back up and out, again we'll do the gentle rotation. So right hand to the floor, left hand to left knee to start. Turn from mid to upper back to the left. And again, the right shoulder might drop and tuck in underneath the right knee. And then left arm can reach up or wrap around your back. And then your gaze can also be modified. Perhaps the gaze follows the hand. Maybe you're looking forward or even down. Now we're going to release the left hand and switch sides. As you come into the rotation, be really mindful that your breath stays even, nice and controlled. It's not getting rapid, it's not being rushed, it's not being constricted to the upper chest. We're still trying to breathe low into the belly, nice rounded, even breath. And then releasing the right hand, coming back into your squat. One more thing, in case you're not a visual person, when we come back up into our dangling, maybe the cool water visualization just doesn't make sense to you. There's another pranayama or breath technique you can do to create this cooling sensation. And a cooling breath or a cooling visualization is great for pittas because they are fiery. And this can help to lower their body temperature. So if you think you might be a pitta, try it and see if there's any effect for you. You're gonna, if you can roll your tongue, you're gonna roll your tongue and stick it out through your lips like you're making a tongue straw. And then you're gonna inhale and exhale through your tongue straw while you're in your dangling posture. If you can't roll your tongue, that's okay. You stick your tongue out through your lips and then smile so that you're breathing in through the corners of your mouth. It looks funny, but no one's gonna see you because you're gonna be upside down. So hands come down, straighten your legs. Heel toe your feet back to the distance that makes sense for your posture. Choose where your hands are going to go. Again, blocks, floor, shins, thighs, or grabbing opposite elbows. And then try the technique of the cooling breath. So you're either making the tongue straw, and while you hold your posture, you're breathing in and out through the tongue straw. Or if you can't roll your tongue, again, it's sticking your tongue out, smiling, and inhaling and exhaling through the corners of your mouth. Last few breaths hanging in your dangling posture. Try to create the sensation of now your tailbone being light and lifting, and the crown of your head being heavy and weighted like an anchor, and see if that gets the crown of your head a little closer to the floor. Maybe for those last few breaths in your posture, you can work towards a straighter leg and fold a little deeper over the leg. We're going to release the hands to the floor, and you're going to lever your knees down, nice and controlled, until you can come into your toe squat. So the toes are tucked. You may have to reach back and tuck your pinky toe under. And then if you need extra props, bring them in. Hands can rest on the knees or the thighs. Bring back the nice tall posture. So we're always working on posture. We want our posture to be automatic so that anytime we're sitting or standing or doing an activity, we have the same beautiful posture so that we're maximizing the length and the strength of the spine so that our nervous system is contained in a vessel that is working at its peak. All right, so toe squat. Now, if any time during the toe squat exercises that you need to come out, you just rise up onto your knees or untuck your toes, move around, and then come back in when you can. So we're going to go into our eagle arms. Arms come up, palms face each other. We're going to do the right elbow under the left, making an X to start. Roll the shoulder blades down and back, lift up through the elbows, and then if you can, bring backs to the palms together, or the full wrap with the palms together. And you're going to continue to draw the shoulder blades down as you lift the elbows up, and then if you need to add on, you can drop the chin as well. Start to release the eagle arms on this side, unravel, roll the shoulders a couple times. If you need that quick break off your toes, take it, and then join us. We're going to go to the other side. So arms back up, this time elbow on top, right elbow on top. Choose your variation, and again go back, shoulder blades down, elbows up, and then the chin can tuck. Now this time, while you're holding your eagle arm pose, you've still got those actions, shoulders down, elbows up, but now see if you can keep your arms in line with your nose or your sternum, and then take your hands out and away from you, just until you feel that increased sensation, and then see if you can hold. Good. We will release, unwind, come into tabletop so you can give your feet a rest. Once you're in table, circle the ankles, scrunch and unscrunch the toes. Get circulation back in there. And then as soon as the feet feel okay, you're going to just stay in tabletop. Feet can rest on the mat, tucked or untucked, your choice. And we're going to move into the wrists. So first off, you're starting with your fingertips facing forward. Then I'd like you to turn them so that they're facing out, so to the edges of your mat. And you're going to gently rock from side to side. Be mindful of how much pressure you put down onto your wrist, and you can go forward, back, side to side, just making circles or lines of energy, whichever you prefer. And then you're going to come to center and turn your fingertips so that they hopefully will point towards your knees. Now you might have to shift your weight quite far back towards the hips or to the heels, and then just determine and see how comfortable you are with leaning forward and back, and then maybe even a little bit of side to side. So we're stretching the backs of the wrists. You don't necessarily have to have your whole hand planted, so if it's really challenging for you, just be really light on the pressure that you're applying, and we're not going to be here for too much longer. All right. Release, let your fingertips come back forward like we would normally have them down, and then flip them, so now that the palms are up. This one you're going to have your weight quite far back to get your palms to come up. Hopefully they will. And then slowly shift your weight back into the wrist. So it's not a position that we would normally find ourselves in our day-to-day life, I don't think. And so you want to be careful. And then again, you can explore a little bit of side to side, perhaps forward and back. So Vatas tend to, as they age, become fragile and more stiff and inflexible. They have a tendency to have diseases such as arthritis. So just think of like air, right? Wind, it becomes brittle, dry. All right, let your weight shift back and then come off your wrists. Swing your feet around to the front. And this is where we're going to take the legs wide into a straddle. You may need to have a little lift under your sit bones, so a blanket, towel, prop, whatever you've got handy. Lift and lower your hips until you know that you've got even weight down to the sit bones. Stretch your legs out as wide as you can comfortably tolerate. And you want to make sure that your toes are pointing straight up towards the ceiling. So the tendency is for the legs to kind of roll back, and that's okay. But if you can make them turn point up, you may even have to grab the flesh of your thighs and roll the flesh of your thighs in towards your pizza so that the legs will stay facing up a bit easier. And then the hands are going to be out in front. And slowly, keeping that beautiful posture, hopefully if you can, ease your way forward, and you're welcome to come onto props. And then once you feel like, yeah, I'm good, I'm going to just stay here, got a lot of sensation in the inner thighs, got a lot of sensation in the backs of the legs. Then, once you've established that, then you can allow yourself to soften a little through the back and maybe come down a little lower. I always like to recommend having a prop underneath your forehead, just because if we do a lot of forward folds, there's a lot of weight and pressure and it creates tension. No one wants you to leave your Yin Yoga practice with a headache. So if you're not able to go very far forward or you just feel like your neck isn't very strong, have a prop underneath it. Maybe a couple blocks stacked or some books or some pillows. Or if you can manage to get your elbows onto something, you could rest your head in your fingertips. I will hold here. Take your time, rise back up, keep your legs where they are, and you're going to turn to your left leg. So ideally you want the middle of your chest or your sternum to be in line with the middle of your thigh. But if that's just not possible, you just can't get it to line up, then move your leg so that you can. And then once you've got that nice clear line of angle with chest and thigh, hands on either side of the left leg, and start to slowly walk your way down. Again, adding as many props as you feel like you would benefit from, starting with the straighter back, and then as you get to your depth, then you can soften and relax, and hopefully that'll give you a bit more space so that you can hold longer with more comfort. From here, you're going to rise back up. let the body naturally turn to center. We always like to have a pause at center just to let things neutralize. The muscles can have a little break. And then we're going to turn to the right leg. So again, create that alignment of sternum to middle of thigh. Move the leg if you have to. Get your hands on either side and then start to lower down. Again, try to start with the beautiful posture, like the really long, straight spine. And then as you melt down, you find your range of motion or your edge. And then allow the spine to soften a little. And we'll hold here on the right. So we're going to start to rise back up. Once you again come to the top, have that pause. Let your hands gently lift your knees and your legs back out in front. And you can take your hands behind you, just let your knees go from side to side. So all of the doshas benefit from a yoga or a yin yoga practice. Anytime that we can find a time and space to be more mindful, to connect with the mind, body, spirit, we can make better decisions. And it can be challenging. You know, it's easy to become distracted and have a million projects on the go and to be super busy and be really productive and yet be completely detached from what we're doing. Just going through the motions. Ego is usually really strongly involved in those actions. So coming back to a place where we're more mindful, we're a little slower, we're paying attention, then we start to notice patterns that we have and we can start to correct them. Almost impossible to correct a pattern if we're not aware of the fact that we're doing it. So we're going to move into our back bend series. So I'd like you to move into the belly. And you can stretch yourself out long on your belly. We'll come all the way down to start. And cross the forearms, rest the forehead on the forearms, and just take a moment to rock your hips from side to side, perhaps lifting your legs, stretching them out long, and then focusing on the breath. So with your forehead resting, deepen your breath. Feel how on the inhale your back rises, and on your exhale, everything sinks and gets lower towards the floor, towards the earth. And we'll just hold here for a few breaths. Now start to rise up, and we're going to bring the arms out for Sphinx pose. Now the arms should be like railroad tracks. The elbows aren't flaring out. They're in line with the shoulders, palms down, forearms are down. Start with them quite far out and away from you so that you can feel the support of your rib cage underneath you. And then just pay attention to what's going on in the glutes and the low body. So as soon as the glutes start to clench, it means that the back is not super happy. So keeping your glutes nice and soft and relaxed, letting your heels splay out naturally, start to inch your elbows closer to you and then reassess. And if you can keep really relaxed, but maybe you're feeling more compression in the spine, then you can continue to move the elbows closer to you. Find where you feel like you found just the right spot, and then once you're holding, draw your shoulders down and back, This will create a stronger sensation. Press down through your forearms. Let your chest move forward and the crown of your head move up. And then we'll hold here. So the back bends are great for the kaphas, really stimulating. Most people tend to have a little bit more energy coming out of the back bend. They feel like they're more open. They've got more energy through the heart, to the chest. And you're going to stay really connected to the breath. So sometimes, for me at least, I like to have just a slightly faster breath. I mean, like really, it's very hard. It's very subtle. But it's a little bit faster breath as I'm holding in a back bend. And then intuitively, almost naturally, I'll add the Ujjayi breath, where it's a sound as you're inhaling and exhaling. Perhaps you're familiar with it from like a vinyasa class or a flow class. And it's not as strong as that because we're not moving, but it can have a sound to it and it can help you stay in the shape a little longer. We're going to start to come out of this shape. So let your elbows and your shoulders soften. Elbows now can flare out. Hands are going to slide back closer to your rib cage. Roll your shoulders down and back. And then we're going to press up. You're going to come into your plank on the knees. And we're going to start the spinal flossing again. So the hips go back, the belly drops. You can make this a little gentler because we're just in the back bend. And then as you come forward, the back rounds. And you're going to want to emphasize this, maybe stay a little longer in your cat pose. And then start the movement forward and back in your own way, in your own time. So finishing the round that you're on. And then meeting back in plank on your knees, bend your elbows, lower back down to the belly. And slide your hands forward to about 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. Fingertips are turned out slightly. When you feel ready, again, check to make sure that the legs are able to stay soft, the glutes are relaxed. And then start to straighten your arms and rise up into seal posture, so you'll look like a seal. Arms can even lock if you wanted to lock the elbows. It's a bit easier. Again, the glutes are pretty soft, but they might just have the tiniest bit of tone just because of the nature of the posture. And again, you want your chest to go forward, shoulders to draw down and back, crown of the head will reach up, and then we'll hold the shape. As you're holding the seal posture, be really mindful. The tendency is for us to sort of dip down where our shoulders get up near the ears. And it is not a healthy place to stay. So we want to press into the hands, reach the body up towards the ceiling. and then hold here. So try to think of, I want as much space between my earlobes and the top of my shoulders as possible. And if you can't hold that, then lower down and either go back into Sphinx or a version of seal where your hands are out farther in front of you. You've got more of your rib cage on the floor. We're gonna slowly bend the elbows, allow your chest to come all the way down. And then slide the hands again underneath the shoulders and slightly farther back towards the waist. You're gonna press into knees and hands, straighten your arms, press up to plank on the knees, hold at the top. And then nice and slow, glide the hips back towards the heels. Keep your knees nice and close together as you ease your way into child's pose. So you want the back to be rounding over the thighs. Stretch your arms out long in front, or if you prefer, hands can move back towards the heels. We're going to rise back up into tabletop. And you're going to bring your feet out in front of you. So we're going to move into our fire log pose. You can choose your right leg to be on the bottom first. And nice and straight, the front shin is parallel to the top of your mat. And then lifting the opposite leg and bringing it to stack. Now, chances are, if you have a knee injury or something that's going on, this isn't a great posture for you. You can modify or adapt by letting the bottom leg be straight, or having your hand support your top leg. So if it's really tight, maybe a hand on the knee or the ankle, or props underneath, and then just letting time do the work for you. Really importantly, you do take the time to shift your hips so that you're evenly weighted through the sit bones. And then once you've created where you can stay, option again is to stay upright, work on building the endurance for your posture, or to add a gentle forward fold. And we'll stay here. We are in spring, and as we move into spring a little farther, we're starting to come into our Pitta season. And Pitta season goes all the way until late fall. Of course, that's when we have the warmest weather, and Pitta is all about fire. So we're moving into our Pitta season. So if you are a Pitta, or if you have Pitta energy that's quite predominant, you're going to have to work extra hard to find activities that regulate or balance the fiery aspect of you. So that would be mindfulness practices, slower movement practices, and cooling practices. So really important that you're eating foods that are cooling. I always like to think of like cucumbers, salads, and then breath practices too. So if you have a pranayama practice or a breath practice, the cooling practice that we did in our dangling pose with the tongue straw, that's a great one to do. So even if you're not predominantly Pitta, if you are feeling quite overheated, a little out of balance, kind of feeling crazy, a cooling breath practice might be just what you need. For Vata, their breath practice tends to be Nadi Shodhana or Anuloma Viloma, which is alternate nostril breathing. So Inhaling one side, exhaling the other, inhaling, exhaling. And for kaphas, because they really require a lot of increased energy, their breath practice tends to be bastrika, or bellows breath. So that's like a really forceful pumping of the belly in and out, kind of like, you know, these things that stoke the fire. And that's a breath practice that they could use. But moving into pitta season, so cooling practices, calming practices, and that can be challenging when the weather's so nice and we want to be really busy. But having at least a fraction of your day where you're taking the time to either do your yoga practice or a breath practice or a meditation, or maybe it's for you, it's just simply choosing foods that are more cooling. All right, so wherever you're at, you're going to rise up if you went forward, and you're going to switch your legs. So it'll be the left leg on the bottom, right leg on the top. Again, your two choices: upright, working on posture, or leaning forward, increasing sensation through the hips. We're going to start to come upright. And once you're upright, have that little pause and ramble the legs. We'll take them back out in front, shake them around, move them up. And then we're going to come down onto our backs. So find the middle of your mat. You can hang onto the backs of your thighs as you gently round to the spine. Come onto your back, pull the knees into the chest. Hands can be again on the knees and the shins, rocking side to side. And then from here, knees stay at your chest, but the arms are going to go out, palms down, like airplane wings out to the side. Firmness through the belly as you gently bring your knees to the right-hand side of your mat. Now, you may need a blanket or a prop underneath the knees or in between the knees. Once you have the support underneath your knees, you can turn your gaze to the left. And if you're already feeling a strong rotation through the spine, a nice stretch of the hips, then this is where you're going to stay. But if you want to explore a little bit farther, see if you can take your top knee farther away from you so that it comes off your bottom knee. And that's just going to increase the stretch through the outside of the hip. And this is where you can stay. Bringing your knees to be stacked again. If you move them, press down through your palms, draw your knees back up to center. Pause at center. Move your props if you were using them, and then knees to the left. Again, we're going to start with the knees staying stacked. Hopefully the shoulders were able to stay down onto the mat for you. Gaze can go to the right. And then if you want a little bit more sensation, take your top knee just slightly away from you so that it drops down off of your supporting knee that's on the bottom. And then we'll hold here. Take one last full deep breath, and then pull the knees back into chest. Hands can come either to the knees of the shins or to the backs of the thighs. And we're going to start to rock forward and back, massaging the spine. Make it playful and fun. Until eventually you're going to rock all the way up to seated. And we'll meet back where we started, cross-legged. Recreate the beautiful tall spine. Heavy through the tailbone, airy and light through the crown of the head. So lately I've been feeling really Vanna-like. Anyway, I've been finding some of the yoga practices to almost be boring, which is really interesting to me because normally I'm just all over it. And to me, that's a sign that I'm a little out of balance. So when I can't focus and when I can't become mindful, I know that I got work to do. So thank you for joining me and sticking with it, moving slower, more mindful. It can be really challenging. So I applaud you. We're going to close by bringing the hands to Anjali Mudra. Close down the eyes, drop your chin, and just have a moment of gratitude for the fact that you participated, you stuck it through, and I'm sure you'll feel the benefits. Fluttering the eyes open. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'm so grateful that you allowed me to guide your practice today. Namaste. And I should mention that if you're not sure of your dosha, there's like 100 different dosha quizzes online. So you can go online, do a little quiz, and you'll get an idea of